Tina Kotek and other Democrats have responded to a letter from the House Energy and Commerce Committee of about a month ago, asking the state for information on Medicaid fraud and what the state, if anything, is doing to combat it. I want to talk to you today about a few things that stood out to me about the state's response. First of all, Tina Kotek, in her press release regarding this letter from the Energy and Commerce Committee, wrote that Tina Kotek is pushing back against unsupported accusations by the Trump administration suggesting widespread fraud in the Oregon health plan. Now let's just stop right there. The House Energy and Commerce Committee is not the Trump administration. The House Energy and Commerce Committee is a committee of the U.S. House of Representatives, which is part of Congress, which is contained and described in a totally different article of the U.S. Constitution. It is not part of the executive branch. It is not part of the Trump administration. So I thought it was odd that she included a reference to the Trump administration when this is a letter from a committee with jurisdiction over Medicaid spending in the United States that is part of Congress, not the administration. Things don't get any better when you get to the substance of this thing. Kotek writes in her quote, "Oregon has been a national leader in making sure people have access to health care, and we work hard to protect the integrity of the Oregon Health Plan, which provides care to 1 in 4 Oregonians." Maybe to Governor Kotek, having a program that is intended to cover the poorest of the poor who cannot afford health insurance otherwise, having that relied upon by 1 out of 4 Oregonians is a bragging point. It might also say something about the degree to which Oregon does not police Medicaid fraud, or about the economy of Oregon in general, where you have 1 out of 4 people who lack the resources to obtain health insurance on their own. I know personally that health insurance is super expensive, but it's an odd thing that she keeps rolling out this 1 in 4 Oregonians covered by the Oregon Health Plan thing. So back to that letter from the committee, that letter came about in part because of reporting that we've done here at the Oregon Roundup for going on a year now about a very curious situation with this company named Uplifting Journey that collected at least $2.3 million from the state of Oregon in Medicaid payments. That is almost certainly the very narrow tip of a very large iceberg that flowed to that company. While that company was receiving those funds from the state of Oregon, it was also housing 2 alleged Tren de Aragua gang members who went up to Washington State, kidnapped a woman, drilled her hand to get her bank account information, and then shot her and left her for dead on Snoqualmie Pass. Fortunately, she survived, which is the only reason we know about any of these things. So it wasn't just a press release from the state of Oregon in response to the committee's letter. There was also a letter that went to the committee, which I've read, and it does answer the committee's questions for the most part. There's a bunch of detail in there about these programs that Oregon has set up that Oregon says are designed to detect fraud and sic their enforcement folks on fraud to prevent it from happening. The problem is applied to this Uplifting Journey situation is that we know that Oregon Roundup started reporting on this back in August of last year, August of 2025. When we first reached out to the Oregon Health Authority, which runs Medicaid for the state of Oregon for the most part, about questions, they responded with some boilerplate, we do not discriminate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. No engagement on the actual allegations that were raised to OHA. And they kept doing business as usual. It wasn't until September when State Rep Ed Deal, who's a Republican from SIO, sent a letter to OHA and to the Fed saying, hey, based on our reporting, hey, this is problematic. We need you to look into this. We now know that a day or two after Rep. Deal sent his letter, that the state of Oregon actually did cut off funding, Medicaid funding, to Uplifting Journey. But that didn't happen until after we had reported on it, and State Rep. Deal had sent a letter to the state saying, hey, you got to look into this. Until that point, Oregon was plenty happy to just keep spending money, having money flow out the door to this organization that holds itself out as a Medicaid provider, but was also housing people that King County, Washington prosecutors say are members of a violent Venezuelan gang and actually carried out violent acts against a woman in Washington state, all while the company was receiving funds from the state of Oregon and Medicaid. Earlier in 2025, we got through public records requests some correspondence from a guy who works at OHA, whose job it is to try to combat fraud. He sent an email to his superiors and colleagues saying, hey, Uplifting Journey and all these other companies that are associated with Uplifting Journey are pretty suspicious looking, and we should look into that. As far as we can tell, there was no action whatsoever taken by the state of Oregon, even after one of their own people identified possible fraud issues with Uplifting Journey. Again, that was in May of 2025 was the email, the internal OHA email. It wasn't until September of 2025, after we had reported on Uplifting Journey and after Rep. Deal had sent his letter to the state of Oregon, that Oregon finally cut off funding. So the question is, Oregon's letter to the House Committee on Energy and Commerce spends a lot of time talking about these are the anti-fraud protections that we have in place. Tina Kotek says we've got really good anti-fraud protections in place. What did those anti-fraud protections do when it comes to Uplifting Journey? As far as we can tell, absolutely nothing. The other thing that is pointed out by the state of Oregon's letter to the committee is that the state of Oregon has only stopped payment on 8 Medicaid providers due to fraud since 2001. Now, I've got a question pending with OHA whether Uplifting Journey and another company that we know was cut off related to Uplifting Journey are perhaps 2 of those 8. But that's only 8 funding cutoffs that the state of Oregon has issued as a result of this elaborate process of fraud prevention that the state of Oregon says is top-notch and prevents fraud in the state of Oregon. The fact of the matter is, and the committee's letter points this out, Oregon is spending way over budget on Medicaid. Oregon can't really explain why it's over budget on Medicaid. Could it be that Oregon is over budget on Medicaid because of rampant fraud that we happen to have stumbled across, just again, the very skinny tip of that iceberg of a problem that is affecting the entire state of Oregon's budget. It's affecting Oregon's ability to use Medicaid responsibly, to help provide insurance to the people that deserve it and need it and qualify for it under Oregon and federal law. But Tina Kotek gets this letter from Energy and Commerce and just blasts back saying it's the Trump administration. It's not the Trump administration. And laying out these steps that the state of Oregon says it's taking to prevent fraud, without acknowledging that it didn't catch the fraud this time. If in fact it's fraud, we don't know for sure because we don't have the billing statements. But what we do know is that Uplifting Journey was receiving $2.3 million from the state of Oregon at the very least, while it was housing these guys that allegedly went up to Washington to commit some really heinous crimes against this woman. We'll have more. We're still covering this Medicaid fraud story from the state of Oregon, but wanted to touch base with you on this now that Tina Kotek has responded to an Energy and Commerce Committee letter. The feds are investigating this. Hopefully they stick with it. It's going to be one of the only ways we get to the bottom of it. We're sticking with it because I believe that it's very likely that Medicaid fraud is a very serious problem in Oregon. And if Tina Kotek and the people who run Oregon were serious about maintaining a system that they believe is absolutely essential for 1 out of 4 Oregonians, they'd be taking it seriously too.